Let me guess, you signed up for every free lead magnet and binged on every marketing YouTube video and thought, what am I missing? Why isn't my business exploding like that? Well, I can tell you, you're not alone. Whether you're just getting started or have an established business, entrepreneurship can be really lonely, but it doesn't have to be. Overcoming your fear of launching or building your personal brand or figuring out how to scale, it shouldn't be holding you back. It should be empowering you. On this podcast, we're going to deep dive into the mechanics of what it takes to build your brand, make your mark, and stake your claim in the digital marketing space. I'll be chatting with people from all walks of life and stages in their careers. I will be getting inspiration from real experts who will share their actual strategies and techniques to grow loyal and raving followings and sell more stuff. This is entrepreneurship from people who are already there making it happen. My name is Jeff Mendelson. Join me and welcome to the One Big Tip podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. And today I am really pleased to be speaking with Damion Lupo. He is the financial truth teller, and also he's a 5th degree black belt. So we have a lot to talk about today. He is the chief honey badger, and I want you to elaborate on this, the chief honey badger at Financial Underdogs, where they teach financial literacy and give people access to their trapped retirement money. So Damion, welcome to the show.
Jeff, it is so good to be here, man. I'm excited about this conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us. So tell us about the honey badger, and how did that become your mascot?
Well, it's funny because if you go to YouTube, you end up seeing things that are crazy, like Taylor Swift with 200 million views. And then you see this honey badger with like 1 billion views. And I saw this thing and I go, that's the coolest animal ever. I want a pet. But then I realized what it was. It was the most fearless animal in the world. Literally, that's its title. And I started thinking about it. And that's really what we need to adapt or embody if we're going to break the financial shackles in our lives. We have to be willing to be fearless and committed and resilient and decisive all the time. Otherwise, we just literally get stuck. And so that's why the honey badger became our avatar. It's who we are as a culture and our tribe. We all see ourselves as a little bit of a honey badger.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit about Financial Underdogs. What is it that you guys teach over there? And how is that interesting for the tribe that you were building?
Well, the thing about the Financial Underdogs is unless you're born on third base with a silver spoon, we think of ourselves as an underdog, like we're fighting against a system. And oftentimes we don't know what the system is. We're just like, it's not really working. I feel stuck or trapped, or it's just frustrating. And so the idea behind Financial Underdogs is to give people a dose of reality and truth and some actionable things they can do, starting off with just what is really true, what's really going on. And I guarantee it's not on CNN or CNBC or the Wall Street Journal. Those are all systems that are meant to market to us and sell us mutual funds. And so this is really about digging into money and understanding it, not Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman style. This is really about how you become free and break the shackles permanently. And so we dive into that and shred conventional wisdom. So it's a lot of fun to get to the truth and the heart.
So what's interesting is that you wrote a book about this, right? And in the book, you're talking about using financial vehicles that aren't the Wall Street types, right? That aren't the mutual funds or buying stocks and everything. What is the premise of that? And how does that thinking change the way that you would approach making money for your retirement?
Well, the whole premise, when I was looking at things, first off, I started off looking at my parents and I saw that they basically played by the rules and they did what they were told and they ended up retiring broke and they're like struggling and that was brutal. So then I said, is there another way? And I sort of stumbled into something because I was out in the world looking and seeking. And I noticed there was something that was a part of the retirement plan system in the tax code that gave people the ability to have control of their retirement money and getting them to a place where they could pay zero taxes permanently, like literally when they spent the money, the whole 9 yards. And so I said, this seems like a better plan because the average person is going to spend 70% of their money they make over their lifetime in taxes. So 70% versus zero. And it's not because they're finding some miracle. It's because they just used a part of the tax code that nobody tells them about. And this was a way for people to take control. And Jeff, it's more than anything, it's about personal responsibility, about owning the stuff and not just abdicating responsibility, handing money over to some advisor and like smoking a bunch of opium and thinking that it'll work out. Like this is about you owning your life.
So to be clear, we're not just talking about owning your car and driving it for 10 years versus leasing it. Like what would be a good example? Let me turn it over to you.
So this is where financial literacy comes into play, and people like Robert Kiyosaki have done great work with their work, their books and things, teaching people how to understand how to make money their slave versus being a slave of it. And so it's not about being broke. It's not about staying broke. It's not about retiring broke. The entire system says don't spend more than you make and retire broke so that you're in a lower tax bracket. That is the messaging that we're getting. What I'm saying is teach money how to be your slave. So you're investing in things like maybe it's apartments, maybe it's your own business. It's something that's producing money to you that you're not working, 10 hours a day to produce. And then once you understand how to do that, you start shifting your thinking into, oh, you know what? It's unlimited. It's not just about my time for money. It's literally about shifting to where you're trading your money for time by buying assets, by investing in businesses. It's just understanding the system. The rich understand the system. It's why they're freer. Whereas the poor and middle class just struggle. And it's because they're always exchanging their time for money.
So this is interesting. This leads then into your one big tip, which is to clarify what some of these financial behaviors are in order to help you achieve this, your financial, your financial security intact, being freer in order to do the things that you really want to do, spend time with family, travel more, and also have a home to come back to when you're done doing that, right? What is your one big tip? How does that play out in your world?
So the one big tip, and this is mostly a trust issue, and there's a tactical version of this. It's not just a woo, like the tip is not, if you will it, money will fall from the sky and hit you in the head. Because that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And The Secret made it famous. What the tip is, hey, you know what? You don't need somebody to guru you. There is nobody other than you. The question is, what is the question? And so when I wrote Reinvented Life after I lost 20 million bucks, I said, okay, I need better questions. And so I wrote this book with each chapter having these questions. And the Reinvented Life workbook has questions. And it's like, one of the things you have to understand is that your external life, the house, the car, the people around you are a reflection of you internally. Well, if you don't know who you are internally, you're going to keep trying to fix the things externally. You're going to buy a better house or a newer car. You're going to try to stay broke because you're afraid of spending money. So if you ask questions, you can get to the core thing, like what do you actually value? Do you value significance or do you value contribution? Do you value certainty or uncertainty? Like what do you actually value? When you get clear on that, clarity is the power you need. And so the whole process of going through these questions is you realize I actually have the answers inside. I just didn't know what the questions were. And so that's what the workbook is. It's 10 chunks of questions, everything from figuring out reality. What's your runway? Like how much money and resources do you have until you are literally homeless? Most people go, I got to work hard because I need money. And I say, well, how much runway do you have? And they say, I'm not sure. The question is, if you stopped working, how long until you can't pay anything, like you can't eat? And most people have never looked at it because they're not looking at reality. They're just looking at the conjecture or the fear mongering that's on the news. And so this workbook goes into those questions. It goes into things like your higher order consequences, meaning the behaviors you're doing. If you just constantly are eating ice cream cones and you go, this is what's important to me. What you're really saying is, I don't value the relationships with my family because I'm going to die, because I'm going to be, it's an early death. And so if you move through those questions of, digging down and asking what is true, that's the entire premise. The one big tip is what is true, figuring it out by the questions. It'll allow you to change things because, Jeff, you can't change a lie. And most people are working with lies.
What would be some good examples of these 10 questions, right? I mean, it sounds to me like these 10 questions are formulated in a way where they really, or first of all, they're open-ended, but they also are designed to extract clarity from whatever it is in your life. And I really like that, that first question about runway, right? Because I think not enough people even understand what the word runway means, in this context, which is basically how much money do you have until, for you to launch the business. If you did absolutely nothing else, does that mean you go live in Thailand, for $500 a month until you can stretch out your savings a little bit? Or does it mean that you're going to put maybe not send your kids to college just yet, right? What are some of the other questions that people should be asking themselves with answers that they already have inside of them?
Well, one of the things that people tend to chase, and I was like the master hedonist. So I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, this was my life. We tend to chase things that are very material based. So we say, okay, my goals are X. So one of the questions is, if you were to write down your goals, and most people haven't, but let's do this, write down your goals. What percentage after 20 minutes, if you looked at all your goals, which of them are stuff versus experiences? And if I asked you, okay, what would you go after if you actually couldn't fail? Like if there was no chance you could fail, then what would you put on here? Would it just be a bigger house, or would it actually be an amazing marriage? Like asking those different questions, because what we find is that we're shifting from the success target to a fulfillment target, and it changes everything because success is a moment. fulfillment is your life. It's that journey that we're on. And so people tend to have a lot of stuff and there's never enough, because as you and I we've talked about offline, the gadgets and the widgets and the gizmos, they're never ending. Like you can always have more stuff, but it makes you happy for a minute. And then you go, like me, I have 15 microphones. Like I'm never going to be happy with microphones. Like I have to get more. And that can happen with cars or people or all those things. And so it's really it's unpacking what matters and what's going to make you genuinely happy, because most of us we're not on the path towards happiness. We're on the path towards momentary highs. We're like a bunch of crackheads.
So we're not talking about feng shuiing our life here. We're not talking about going minimalist, Marie Kondo, and throwing everything out, right? What would be a good example of that?
Well, I mean, one of the things is literally there's a section in the book called stillness, and it's getting still and actually just paying attention to reality. We tend to be chasing things. We're in like a hamster wheel. We're just constantly chasing. And one of the things that we're not aware of is what are the metrics of our life? And if we get really clear on the metrics, what we're actually doing and measuring things, look, there are things that you can measure that count, and there are things that count that you can't measure. I get all that. Most of the things in our life that we should be measuring, we're not measuring because we don't want the reality of what we're doing. It's a little scary sometimes to look at our credit card statement, and the metrics of our business tells us what to do or what not to do. And so reinventing your life, really getting your arms around it and designing a life versus having this thing by default is about understanding what's really happening and the trajectory you're going. The metrics tell you where your trajectory is. So I can pretty much tell you a year from now where you're going to be based on where you were a year ago, because you're pretty much going along the same path. And the metrics, if you answer the questions about what's really happening, you can get clarity and say, okay, well, if I switch 3 degrees or 8 degrees, or if I get that new person in my life that can hold me accountable, it starts to change things. But we're not going to change things if we're oblivious, if we're in the fog. That's a big part of the shift.
So when you deal with people that are going through this course, right? How do you get them to elicit the change? Like it's one thing to be cognizant of, like the new metrics, right? How much is this credit card debt really costing me? How much is this, how much is this car, this new BMW that I bought when I really shouldn't have, really costing me? How do you find is the best way to elicit a change? I mean, short of, clopping them on the back of the head, beating them with a stick, or painting a dire picture that, you're going to die broken in some rundown hotel. What are some of the motivators to get someone out of that?
It's a really funny thing that you can use a stick or a brick or a club and beat on people. When somebody says, I want something different, there's something called an action correction cycle. And it's really based on accountability. It's taking action, figuring out what's real about it, and then correcting it. And we tend to not want to do things because we're afraid of judgment of mistakes. We make a mistake and we were judged as kids, so we carry that forward, and we don't want to be judged. We don't want to look stupid, and we don't want to be thrown out of the tribe. People say if you don't do well in school, you're getting kicked out. So then you try to be perfect. You don't want to make a mistake. With the action correction cycle, it's about taking action on whatever it is that matters once you're clear on that, and then having a group around you that you respect enough to where when they give you feedback, you go, okay, and you'll shift. Because we tend to do more for other people for the validation if we're in the right group where there's a lot of respect, and especially if we're paying for it, than we will just on our own. It's human nature. So taking action, correcting it based on accountability with other people shifts everything. So the first question is, who is the bald, grayer person in your life that's giving you mentoring or coaching? Which group are you a part of that isn't just saying, yeah, we love you, you're beautiful, you're fantastic. They're actually giving you reality. That's what's missing in most of our lives, is the damn truth.
Interesting. So once you find those people, once you find that tribe, and this could be a family member, it could also be an outside group, it could be, peers in your, in the type of industry that you work in. How do you vet people like that? Like, there's got to be a process for that as well, right?
Well, yeah, there's another chapter in the book is called the osmotic approach. It's the osmotic adaptation. And what that means is you're going to absorb people. And so the first question to ask is, okay, what is the ideal version of me, with the values that I espouse? And then when you're vetting people, the question is, how wealthy, how healthy, how much integrity do they have? If you're measuring everybody. And then you say, okay, you know what? If these people are at this high level, I'm going to get pulled to that level. If these people are at a really low level, that's where I'm going, because we become the average of these people. And so I'm really careful about who's in my life and in my circle and who I listen to. Like you and I could easily talk for hours because we get along. There's a vibe there and it works. If you're around people that you go, yeah, you know what, you're really successful, or you're my neighbor and I'm kind of defaulting, like I want to have the success. And so I'm going to hang out with you, or you're my neighbor, so I'm going to hang out with you. you're really missing the point that you're going to become the people that you're around. So you have to be incredibly sensitive to picking, and you pick based on who you want to become, because you will become the people you're around. And you go, well, I'm around my spouse all the time. I hope your spouse is amazing, because you're going to become a lot like your spouse. That's just how that works. So I'm not saying get rid of your spouse, but you might have to. And I say that as an extreme example, that if you're not picking, it's picking you. The life is picking you if you're not actually conscious to the choices you're making.
That is amazing advice. And to say it so clear and to be so succinct about it is amazing. I really hope that a lot of people pick up on that. Damion, can you please let people know how they can learn more about Financial Underdogs and how they can reach out to you directly if they would like to learn more?
Best thing to do is to go to financialunderdogs.com. Check out the podcast. You can direct connect with me, Damion at financialunderdogs.com, and just learn. I mean, that's the whole point. We're in this together. And I know we've heard of that a lot with the pandemic. Everybody's in this together. But the truth is, if you don't find a tribe, you're still isolated. Even if people are going through the same stuff, in Financial Underdogs, in that tribe, we truly are working together to improve everybody together. And it's for those that are responsible and committed. Just come visit and hang out and learn together with us.
That's amazing advice. Thank you so much for that. Damion, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. This has been Value Bomb Rich podcast. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's been a pleasure.